normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
I want to jump to this story and get back into the more partisan politics here. This is from the Post-Millennial. Breaking: home of suspect in the killing of an elderly Jewish man at pro-Palestinian protest has been searched by police. For those that didn't see the story, an elderly Jewish man was, I believe the reporting is he was struck in the head by a pro-Palestinian activist, fell down, hit his head, and died. Get this. Well, first, the breaking news on the story is that they're searching for this. They're searching this guy's house. Take a look at this tweet from End Wokeness. An old Jewish man was murdered by a pro-Palestine activist. The medical examiner already ruled it a homicide. This is the media coverage. CNN: man in California dies after suffering head injury at pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Here's one. Jewish man dies after hitting head in altercation. Here's one. Jewish man dies after altercation. And here's another one. Jewish man dies from injury suffered in rally, in Israel-Palestine rally.
Incredible.
There was, I think it was the Daily Mail, I tweeted this out, said, elderly Jewish man dies after falling and hitting head. It's just absolutely incredible. So I went through all these stories. I want to point out something else. If you go to the Anti-Defamation League's extremism map, the Nashville shooter is not even listed. So they all claim in the media that the right is a big threat. Oh, the right wing, a completely disorganized group of disparate ideologies, some that don't even agree with each other. That's the big threat. It's just random lone wolves when there is something they call right wing. And when you get the far left extremism, they don't even put it on the map. Right. They don't track it and the cops don't go after it. They go after it in a certain sense, but they don't call it terror. They'll call it just, an unfortunate tragedy or something.
I don't know how to explain how it feels being banned from a country for hatred or what is it, racism, because I called out Islam not liking gay people very much, had a pride parade, and then to see the same streets filled with people like calling for death.
Are you still banned from the UK?
As far as I know, yeah.
And you did like this pop-up pointing out that Islam is anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So they said, get out and don't come back.
Get out and don't come back. And then you have a bunch of people that have immigrated there, not everyone, obviously. There are supporters of Palestine that aren't chanting these things, of course, but there were people chanting death to the, I don't know if I can say it on,
LGBT and stuff. Like more
and other groups. I don't know what I can say on YouTube these days, it's saying these things. And then none of them they're not even like citizens. They're not being deported. And
well, did you see when the guys were flying the English flag, the cops were like, you got to put that flag away. It's inciting people. And then a couple of guys were flying the Union Jack, which is the flag of Great Britain, not just England. And they said, look, mate, there's more of them than us. Put the flag away. Yeah. And a lot of people were like, that's it. When you can't fly the flag of your own country in your country because people who are not from your country are threatening violence against you, that's a crazy prospect. I think what we're seeing now with this guy being killed and the bias, look, how many Jewish or right-wing protesters went to far left events and killed Antifa guys? It's not happened. What we see consistently is the far left engaging in acts of violence, and then they get excused by the media. The media acts like nothing happened and no one was there. And then they say, oh, look, because there's no reporting on this, that proves the right's the bigger threat.
Steve Scalise, I believe, currently has a colostomy bag because he was shot by a far left Bernie bro supporter at the congressional baseball game. Yeah. Rand Paul was at that same very baseball game. He had to hit the deck for cover. Rand Paul's been attacked at his home. He was attacked walking in D.C. one time. He was attacked at his home. There's the guy that you were talking about today, Jay,
Aaron Danielson.
Yeah, Eric Danielson
Aaron Danielson.
Oh, Aaron Danielson.
I think it was Portland that happened? Or
So and he was shot.
You guys want to know something really, really, really funny? When you look up the killing of Aaron Danielson on the ADL's website, it says Michael Reinl, an Antifa activist, shot and killed a right-wing extremist.
There's no reason to believe he was an extremist at all.
He was just some dude walking on the street.
And then there's all
angering.
More to the point. There's also the kid that was killed by the driver. Specifically said that he was after him because he was a Trump supporter, and I'm sure that is not treated as a political murder because they try to talk it down now.
And in the 2016 election, we saw so many instances of violence against Trump supporters. I mean, it was just ubiquitous, but it wasn't covered in the media. And Mike Cernovich went to the White House, in the press briefing room, and he just called it out. and they were laughing at him.
Yeah.
They were laughing at him. That was the response, right? But like, we were saying this stuff back then already. Look where it is now.
Yeah.
Here, let me pull this up. This is from the ADL's website. It says, August 29, 2020, left wing. Michael Reinl, an Antifa activist, shot to death a member of a right-wing extremist group during a protest in Portland.
Unbelievable.
It's factually false.
So
it was a guy walking down the street. There was no event. The event was over. And Michael Reinl, who has an extremist tattoo on his neck, walked up to him and shot him twice in the chest.
Yeah, that's in your Doc Crossfire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way it's framed, it's like, well, this is an anti-fascist person doing anti-fascist things, right? That's
activism.
Yeah.
No, this was an extremist who sought out a person on the right to kill. But when they continually lie, cheat, and steal, and obfuscate these things. Now, look, I'm not saying, that the right is more or less. We had this conversation with Stephen Marsh on the Culture War. He says there's more seditionists on the right. I think that's actually factually incorrect. I don't know what he means by the right, and he couldn't define it either, and he said it wasn't helpful, and I agree with him. It was funny because he was criticizing me for saying the left and the right, and I was like, well, what do you say then? Because then he said, he goes, look, you keep saying like the left and the right. I'm like, what does that even mean? Now, when you talk to the right, when they say these things, I was like, right there. Like, what does it really mean? We don't know. But I can tell you that what we see in the press always ignores. Let me tell you, the Summer of Love riots was a mass death incident. How many deaths qualify for a mass death incident?
More than 3, is it?
It's 4, I think.
4?
Right? Something
yeah,
like that.
30 deaths in the Summer of Love riots. So what's the issue?
They have to happen all within like 20 minutes of each other.
Well,
it has to be white people responsible. Then it has to be a
right.
mass
So
death.
so my point is this: the riots were one thing, fueled by one thing, led by people of a shared ideology, which resulted in the death of between 24 and 36 people. That's a mass death incident facilitated by the left. And the issue is exactly as I describe it. It is this widespread terror and blunt force violence. And when it reaches that level, people die. Now, by all means, be worried and upset that there are, right-wing militias or whatever it is you're concerned about. If someone actually is committing violence or threatening to do so, we should stop them. What do we get? We get the weird fake kidnapping plot, and then we get nothing from Chaz Chop. You think the ADL's reporting on the fact that 2 guys unloaded hundreds of rounds from a rifle into a white SUV? They don't do anything about it.
I think you're right. We need to be on guard against far-right extremism as well, because I think Chase Geiser was saying, like, if the pendulum were to swing, he feels, I think he identified himself, he was on the show last night as right-wing or whatever, part of the conservative movement or whatever, that if the power were to come back, we need to have a cool head, like maintain. You don't want people to go nuts in any direction from any, and like it's just, we got to make sure that we don't radicalize people, and then we're on guard against radicalization. It really doesn't matter what direction.
I forget where I read this, but someone was talking about violence, and they said the people on the left treat violence like a knob that you can turn up and down, and they'll turn it up and they'll turn it down depending on the politics of the day.
Yes.
People on the right treat violence like an on-off switch. Right. You're voting. Now it's gunfight time, and that really does speak to the character of people on the right and the left. The people on the right really do want to work within the system, and they want to believe in the system because they're not nihilists the way that people on the left are. A lot of times, people on the right, if they're not in organized religion, they have some kind of connection to spirituality and stuff, and so they believe in right and wrong. People on the left don't generally believe in right and wrong, and we had I forget what his name when we on the
Culture War,
the Culture War on Friday.
Stephen Marsh.
So he was talking about. He mentioned
morality is meaningless.
Yeah, morality is meaningless, and so for him, it's clearly something that is not black and white. Whereas people on the right tend to be like, it's not time for violence. It's not time for violence. Kill everyone in the room.
Look, Stephen Marsh, I think he's a good dude in the sense that he's willing to come and have a conversation, but I think he's a bad dude, with all due respect, because he said he believes children should have access to these adult material books.
Oh, I wish I was there with
and
you
he
guys
doesn't care.
for that
He doesn't care.
conversation.
He says morality means nothing to me, and I said that's the problem right there. You have moral people who decide for logical reasons some things are off limits. Why? Well, the people who are exposed to twisted content and twisted practices end up becoming very, very unhappy. We're trying to reduce self-harm, reduce depression, maximize productivity and happiness.
This is very well recorded. Like, you can look at if porn is exposed to boys at very young ages, they tend to go for more and more extreme things as they age, to the point where they have normalized like violence against the other gender, because that's the only thing that can get them off now. And this is very well studied. Anyone can look it up. And yeah, it's totally has to do with, particularly with exposure at young ages, where you don't really have that decision-making skill, prefrontal cortex totally developed yet.
That's actually when we were talking about the news media trying to protect like the guy who punched the dude that died. And it's like, I can see I think that their idea is, I don't want to expose society to the fact that it was a Palestinian guy or a guy that was pro-Palestine punching a guy that was pro-Israel, because they don't want to like twist the minds of the people. But I
think that's cover, because if you, I've talked about this guy Herbert Marcuse before on the podcast. He wrote a paper in the 60s.
One-Dimensional Man.
He wrote the book called One-Dimensional Man, but he wrote a paper, an essay called that, I believe he called it On Tolerance, but it was called Repressive Tolerance. And the argument that he made in it was, if it is left wing, it is acceptable to be violent, and that it is okay because you're doing it for a good reason. That's the long and short of it. It's ridiculous and it's childlike, but it's also the type of mindset that you see coming from the left. You see it in the media when they don't talk about things that the left does, or they talk them down, or it's not that big of a deal. And yet if the right, one of the things that he said is, you should censor people on the right at the level of thought. If you can control people's thoughts, then they will not carry out violence. And it, like I said, it's called the paper's called On Toleration, on Repressive Tolerance. It's worth a read. It's not very long, but it really does lay out the type of logic that leftists tend to be using when they apply to everything, and you see it in society now.
It's amazing how they can create life or death situations out of everything. You know, you say it's a knob, but like I'll notice with leftists, they'll be like, you're trying to kill trans children, and that'll be like what they're saying in their rallies, and this is why we have to have these extreme responses. And I'm like, holy, if you spent like 1 second in the body of like just a 19-year-old white kid in university experiencing their life, you would become a Nazi overnight, because you'd be like, the oppression I am facing, it's like nothing. It's not comparable. You have the corporations, the banks, the government, the media, all these people on your side, and you still think it's a life or death oppression situation. Imagine having none of that.
in the documentary Infringed, we're going to keep plugging it because we want you to watch it. You talk to a guy in Berkeley. You're going around asking people at Berkeley, do they want to ban guns? And then you finally meet one guy who's like, no. And then he says he's a gay Republican. And then you're like, do you feel safe? And he's like, well, you know, kind of not really.
Yeah.
I got some questions about Infringed. Maybe you guys can answer them for me, since you did it. How many guns did you fire over the course of the shooting? That's a funny word, shooting. Isn't that a weird metaphor?
Filming.
Shooting the movie.
Shooting.
What's your round count?
I can't count. The most guns would have been at the astronaut cum ranch.
Right. Yeah.
What?
Cum ranch.
What?
Sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
That's one hell of a tangent, Lauren.
I guess the shooting range that Brandon and Cody go and shoot at was actually like a NASA training facility or something, and they had astronauts.
It's not at the range. It's like it's close by.
They've got like a
I don't know if this is supposed to be secret. Is it supposed to be secret? I don't know.
I'm so sorry if I. No, I did publish a bit of that.
Okay.
Yeah, they said
this is Brandon Herrera and Cody Wilson.
They assume that the astronauts
were
up to no good while they were there, so they call it that.
Oh, that's funny.
I see.
So how many total weapons do you think you sampled over the course of
in there?
Or do. I mean, let's talk about it.
We'll say that one for the numbers only.
Oh, I'd say at least a couple dozen, maybe more, 30, 40.
No, it wasn't that.
Well, I was shooting in Canada as well. And then we were shooting with Stan Malua and... you're probably right. It's probably like a couple dozen.
Yeah, we shot like maybe 4 or 5 in Virginia, and then at the ranch in San Antonio, like maybe 10.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm hyping things up in my head. Woman moment.
Thing is, they were high caliber guns as well.
It was very exciting.
There was an anti-aircraft weapon that we fired, which was is
that 50 BMG?
I think it's.
There's only like 8 of them in existence. They're to shoot helicopters, but you can hold them standing.
Oh,
that was
really fun.
I don't know what was that. I think Brandon had it. It was shoulder I don't know enough about guns. There's like a bullpup 50 BMG that he had mounted on his shoulder and was firing.
Yeah, we both got to shoot that. That was like really crazy.
And also Hitler's buzzsaw.
Hitler's buzzsaw.
What's that?
MG42.
MG42, but
It was very popular amongst the Germans.
I know.
And then it like gave me this really bad rash on my arm. There was a funny
Hitler's
name.
hickey.
Hitler's hickey is what we call it.
That was the MG42, the hickey. You guys called it the hickey.
No,
Hitler's
that's the MG42.
So why do they call it the Hitler's buzz? Is that because the dude's
Super fast.
So it's the same gun that the Nazis used in World War II. It was just a different round back then. So now it's been changed to a NATO round. But yeah, it's the same gun otherwise.
This is whenever
it's super rapid fire.
It's insane.
like in Band
It's
of
in the
Brothers,
film.
where they're like attacking machine gun nests. Like that's the gun. The MG is the one.
MG42.
It's like a massage. Your whole body is like shaking. It's
So
bizarre.
I will just say real quick, you can watch the full documentary on timcast.com. We hope you do for several reasons. We want to do more. And if we can, at the very least, break even, we have the money then to do another one. But we're also putting a ridiculous amount of money in marketing. So just understand this. Even if you don't want to watch a documentary, just as long as you know, we got an ad up on Twitter. I put up a clip, a trailer for it. I put $50,000 behind it. It's not just about getting people to watch a documentary, getting new memberships, making more documentaries. The ads themselves are activism. If we can make a lot of money off this documentary and then put out advertisements that effectively advocate for gun rights and normalize gun safety and gun culture, we are winning the culture war. So we want to do more of this. We got a whole bunch more plans. So definitely check out the documentary and become a member. Don't miss it. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.